Mario Kart. I'm going to go back a little bit here. All right, but me and the boys were playing Mario Kart, and it dawned on me thinking about grace in that game, because in that game, if you fall off the track, it doesn't start you back at the beginning. No, the little dude hovers over and bloop, bloop, picks you up and drops you back where you were on the cart. Life is a lot like that. When you mess up and you fall, God's not like, all right, square one, and you start your race all over again. No, he just picks you up and he puts you back on the track. That way you can keep going and keep going. So I want to compare a couple people and just look at their lives. Actually, I didn't anything. I felt like God spoke to me about this, and I started looking and was really surprised at the similarities. But if I start to mention Peter, what do you think of? Walking on water. Huh? Ear. Yes, cut off the ear. Angry man. Right? Chop the ear off. He was either really good with a sword or really, really bad. I'm just saying, there's no in between there. Because he was either going for the head and only got an ear, or he was going for the ear to make a point. There's no like middle. I'm just saying. Side note, that's a freebie for you. What else? I say Peter. What else you think of? He denied Christ, right? So what about Judas? Yeah, okay. It's like Peter's like, okay, yeah, he walked on water. He chopped that dude's ear off because he was about to mess with Jesus. Yeah, he denied him too, right? Judas, ooh, that guy. Right? I want to point something out. Both Judas and Peter were called by Jesus to follow him. Think about that. When we hear Judas, it's like, ooh, that guy. Because we really are only capitalizing on one aspect. But I want you to look at something else here. Not only were they both called by Jesus to follow him, in fact, they were both commissioned by Jesus to do miracles. If you look in Luke 9, verses 1 and 2, Jesus called the 12 together, the 12, not 11. He called the 12 together, and he gave them the power and authority to drive out demons, to cure diseases, and he sent them out to proclaim the kingdom of God and to heal the sick. Judas went out to proclaim the gospel. Judas went out and prayed for people to be healed. Are you with me? Judas. Like when I say, what do you think of Judas? You're like, that dude who healed people and cast out demons. Nobody says that. Right? We really focus on that one failure there that really gets there. But before we get there, I want to point out a couple other things. They were both friends of Jesus. They were both a part of feeding the 5,000. They were both a part of taking care of the sick and the poor. They were both serving alongside. They were both there when Lazarus was raised from the dead. Pretty crazy when you think about that, right? You're like, well, but all the disciples were there. Yeah. But I still think that's pretty significant. If you saw the things the disciples saw, how many of you are like, if I could be a disciple for one day? You would sign up, right? One day. If I could for one day walk with Jesus and see one of those miracles. Judas walked with all of them. He was a part of all of them. And I'll point something out. So John 12, let's look at verse 1. It says, 6 days before Passover, Jesus therefore came to Bethany where Lazarus was, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. So you go backwards one chapter, and it's the whole story where Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. The disciples are there. They see this. They're a part of it. And I love this because it just points it out here in John, where Jesus had raised Lazarus from the dead. So they gave a dinner to him there, and Martha served. Lazarus was one of those reclining with him at the table. Mary took and poured an expensive ointment made of pure nard, and anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped it with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of perfume. But Judas, one of the disciples, said, why was this ointment not sold and given to the poor? Verse 6, he said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. And having charge of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put in it. Really interesting. Judas was a part of all of these miracles. Judas is in the house hanging out with Lazarus. Not only did he see Lazarus get raised from the dead, but he was hanging out with Lazarus. Did y'all catch that? Reclining in the living room with Lazarus. I mean, that would be cool, right? Just to hear how that story went, just to sit in the room. But this is the thing I want to point out. All of the disciples were there. The only one who had a problem was Judas. Why? Because he was a thief and he wanted money to be spent so he could actually rob from it, correct? You with me? Here's where I'm going with this. Judas was so hung up on his sin that he was missing the moments that he was given. He was missing the miracles that he was participating in because he was so focused on his sin. I just want to ask a question. How many times do we get so focused with overcoming this one simple area of our life that we miss all the amazing things that God's trying to do around us, in the middle of us, to bring our attention back to who He is? But we're so focused on the sin that we miss the miracle that's right in front of us. See, the beauty of grace, I believe Jesus was not an idiot. Anybody else with me? Like, we can all pretty much agree on that, right? Then why in the world did He let a thief keep the money bag? Anybody else see a problem when you hear that? Like, Jesus, you know he's stealing from it. Why is he carrying the money bag? I believe that Jesus wasn't positioning him to continue to steal. He was trying to help him overcome his issue with stealing. So I believe there's a lot of times that Jesus positioned the disciples. And if we want to compare here, I'm talking Peter and Judas, because I believe Peter was the same way. See, I believe there's a lot of things that we see. Peter's like, oh, he chopped off the ear. Dude had anger issues, right? Like when we talk Peter, we talk some anger issues. I actually think the anger issues were a byproduct of his fear. Why did he cut off the ear? Not because he was tough. It was because he was afraid he was going to lose Jesus. Right? Why did Peter, but Peter walked on water, but why did Peter sink? Not because he was strong and mighty, but because he became afraid and took his eyes off Jesus. I believe that Jesus had Peter get out of the boat to simply test the fear that he was struggling with, to help him, allow him to overcome the fear, the sin, the issue that he was fighting. I believe grace is what picks you up and positions you. Hear me. I'm not saying be stupid. There is a huge difference. I'm not saying, oh, I've got a problem with alcohol, I'm going to go hang out in the bar. That's not what I'm saying. Okay? What I am saying is I believe God will take your issue and your struggle and He will use it if you allow Him and we come back and we're repentant for it. See, this is the thing that I find beautiful. Both of these guys walked with Jesus. They saw incredible miracles. Do you realize they both betrayed Jesus? They were both called the devil by Jesus. You remember that? Peter, they're not going to take you. Get behind me, Satan. You think you've had a bad day. When did Jesus look at you and call you the devil? I'm just saying, like, that's a whole new level of let's be real, okay? Called him the devil. In fact, John 6:70, Jesus is talking to the disciples, and He said, have I not chosen you to be the 12, yet one of you is the devil. He's talking to Judas. They were both called the devil. They both denied Jesus. They both walked with Jesus, saw incredible miracles. There's really not a huge amount of difference in their life experience, except for the fact that every time Peter would fall, he would come back. Judas simply tried to make an excuse to continue in his sin. In fact, what was the very thing that led Judas to denying Jesus? Money. 30 pieces of silver. Why was it that Judas missed the miracle? Because he was focused on the money. See, he was so consumed with his sin that he not only missed the miracle, but he ultimately betrayed the miracle worker. Let me ask you, how many times do we find ourselves in a place we become so focused on sin that's going on in our life, trying to hide it, trying to cover it, instead of coming to a place of repentance from it that we miss the miracles that are going on around us and often even betray the one who's trying to save us from the middle of it. We say Judas and we're like, oh, that dude. Can we be honest for a minute? Because most of us are Judas in the room. Anybody ever have that moment? I know some of y'all are like, I'm treading lightly. I know some people are like, I'm about to punch you in the face. You come off this stage, call me Judas again. Right? I saw it. I was like, telling you, the moment I said, some of y'all are Judas in the room, like I was with you till you said that. No. How many times have you been so consumed with your own issue that you betrayed the call of God on your life? Let's be honest for a moment. How many times have you been so consumed with the own things that you were facing and walking through that instead of just being repentant, saying, God, I have totally blown it. Help me. We've said, no, God, I've totally blown it. I'm out. See, God never discredited you. You discredited you. This is the thing I love about grace. You never run too far for grace to catch you. Now, there's another thing that I really want to focus on here. Because yes, they both denied Jesus. Yes, they were both called the devil. All these things happened. Jesus washed both of their feet. I don't care how mighty you think you are in the Spirit or how broken you think you are. Jesus still served them both. He humbled himself and he served them both. They both ate at the table. At the Last Supper, when they were gathered there, they both ate at the table. I don't care how many times you failed. I don't care how far you've gone. Jesus always has a seat at the table. Do you realize Judas ate? Like, think about that for a moment. Judas ate at the table with Jesus. He humbled himself, washed his feet, and then gave him a place at the table, all while knowing he was about to betray him. Anybody ever got mad because you knew somebody talked bad about you or didn't like you, and you were like, I'm done. I'm not even answering your text. Right? I'm not even going to go in that room because they're going to be there. Right? Jesus like, yeah, they're going to be there, so I'm going to serve him. Not only am I going to serve him, I'm going to pull up a seat at the table. I'm going to provide all the way through. See, this is the beauty of grace. It doesn't matter what your intent. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter how far you've fallen. Grace always provides a seat at the table if we're willing to sit down and eat. See, I believe there's a huge difference because when Judas betrays Jesus, it's really about the last thing we hear of him other than he's so overcome with his guilt that he goes and he hangs himself. See, he missed the miracles because he was consumed with the sin until he gave in to the sin. And then he was still so consumed with what he had done wrong.